Picture this. You're blowing out candles at your 28th birthday party, surrounded by family and friends, when your own mother looks you dead in the eye and says you're the biggest mistake she ever made. But just when you think your night couldn't get any worse, your phone buzzes with a text that changes everything. This is the story of how the worst birthday of my life became the best thing that ever happened to me. I'd love to know which corner of the globe you're watching from. And if this story speaks to you, make sure to subscribe. Tomorrow's video is one you absolutely can't miss. My name is Madison Cooper, and until 3 months ago, I was convinced I was living someone else's life. 28 years old, working as a junior marketing coordinator at Henderson & Associates, a mid-sized advertising firm in downtown Phoenix. Every morning, I'd wake up in my cramped studio apartment on Maple Street, stare at my reflection in the cracked bathroom mirror, and wonder how I'd ended up so far from where I thought I'd be. The birthday party wasn't even supposed to happen. My mom, Janet Cooper, had been pestering me for weeks about celebrating. But honestly, what was there to celebrate? Another year of barely making rent, another year of watching my college friends post about their promotions and new houses, while I ate ramen for dinner 4 nights a week. But Janet Cooper doesn't take no for an answer, never has. She showed up at my apartment that Saturday morning with grocery bags full of decorations, a store-bought cake, and that determined look that meant resistance was futile. "Madison, you're turning 28, not 88, she said, pushing past me into my tiny living space. "We're having a party whether you like it or not." By evening, my apartment was packed with people I hadn't seen in months. My younger brother Tyler had driven down from Flagstaff with his girlfriend Sarah. My college roommate Emma brought her new boyfriend, some guy named Derek who worked in tech and wouldn't stop talking about cryptocurrency. Even my neighbor, Mrs. Rodriguez, from across the hall had wandered over with a bottle of wine and stayed for the chaos. The cake ceremony happened around 9. Everyone gathered around my small dining table as I stood there, feeling ridiculous with a paper crown on my head that Tyler had insisted I wear. 28 candles flickered in front of me, casting weird shadows on the walls of my cramped apartment. "Make a wish, Maddie," Emma called out, holding up her phone to record the moment. I closed my eyes, trying to think of something to wish for. A better job, a bigger apartment, the confidence to actually pursue the photography career I'd abandoned after graduation. Instead, all I could think about was how small my life felt, how every year that passed seemed to shrink my possibilities rather than expand them. I blew out the candles to scattered applause and forced a smile as everyone sang a slightly off-key version of Happy Birthday. The cake was vanilla with buttercream frosting, the kind you get from the grocery store bakery. It tasted exactly like every other birthday cake I'd had since childhood. "Speech, speech," Tyler started chanting, and soon everyone joined in. I laughed and waved them off. "Come on, guys, you know I hate being the center of attention." "Just say something," my mom urged from across the room. She was standing by the window, holding a plastic cup of wine and watching me with an expression I couldn't quite read. Okay. I held up my hands for quiet. "Thank you all for being here tonight. I know it's not much," I gestured around my tiny apartment, "but it means a lot to have you guys here." That's when my mom spoke up. "Not much is right," she said, her voice carrying clearly across the sudden silence. 28 years old, and this is what you have to show for it? A studio apartment and a job that pays peanuts? The room went dead quiet. Derek stopped mid-sip of his beer. Emma lowered her phone. Even Mrs. Rodriguez, who spoke limited English, seemed to sense the tension. "Mom," Tyler started, but Janet wasn't finished. "I'm sorry, but someone has to say it. Look around, Madison. Look at your friends. Emma just bought a house. Tyler's getting promoted to shift supervisor next month. And here you are, still living like a college student." My face felt hot. I could feel everyone staring at me, and I wanted nothing more than to disappear into the floor. "I'm trying, Mom. The job market is tough." "The job market is tough?" She let out a bitter laugh. "Madison, I've been watching you drift for 6 years now. 6 years since graduation. And what do you have to show for it? A string of dead-end jobs and a photography hobby you're too scared to turn into a real career. The photography comment hit like a physical blow. She knew how sensitive I was about that, how I'd spent years building up the courage to even call myself a photographer, let alone try to make money from it. "That's not fair," I said quietly. "You want to know what's not fair?" My mom's voice was rising now, and I could see Tyler moving toward her, trying to intercede. "What's not fair is watching your daughter waste every opportunity she's been given. What's not fair is lying awake at night wondering where your father and I went wrong." The room was so quiet, I could hear the refrigerator humming in the kitchen. Emma looked like she wanted to run. Derek was studying his phone like it held the secrets of the universe. "Mom, maybe we should—" Tyler tried again. "No, Tyler, she needs to hear this." My mom looked directly at me, her eyes bright with unshed tears. "Having you was the biggest mistake your father and I ever made. Not because we didn't love you, but because we clearly failed you somewhere along the way. We raised you to believe you were special, that things would just work out, and look where it got you." The words hung in the air like smoke. I felt like I'd been slapped. My own mother, the woman who was supposed to love me unconditionally, had just called me the biggest mistake of her life in front of all my friends. "I think everyone should go," I said quietly, not looking at anyone. The apartment cleared out in record time. Awkward goodbyes, half-hearted promises to call soon, the sound of footsteps in the hallway. Tyler lingered, shooting our mother's dark looks, but she'd already grabbed her purse and headed for the door. "Think about what I said, Madison," she called over her shoulder. "You can't drift forever." Then it was just me and the remnants of my birthday party. Dirty plates, empty cups, and the lingering smell of vanilla cake. I sat on my couch and stared at the mess, feeling hollowed and raw. That's when my phone buzzed. It was a text from my boss, Marcus Henderson, the founder of Henderson & Associates. Marcus never texted anyone after hours, let alone on weekends. He was old school, believed in work-life balance, and had a strict policy about not bothering employees outside office hours unless it was a genuine emergency. The text was brief. "Madison, need to speak with you first thing Monday morning. Important news about your position. Hope you had a good weekend." My stomach dropped. After the humiliation of my mother's words, this felt like the universe piling on. Marcus wanted to talk about my position on a Monday morning? That could only mean one thing. I was getting fired. I spent the rest of the weekend spiraling. Every interaction I'd had with Marcus over the past few months suddenly seemed loaded with hidden meaning. Had I missed a deadline, screwed up a client presentation, made some catastrophic error that was just now coming to light? By Monday morning, I'd convinced myself that my career in marketing was over before it had really begun. I dressed carefully, choosing my most professional outfit, a navy blue blazer I'd bought for interviews and rarely wore to the office. If I was going down, I was going down looking put together. The Henderson & Associates office occupied 2 floors of a glass building on Central Avenue. I'd been working there for 8 months, long enough to know the rhythms of the place, but not long enough to feel truly secure. As I walked through the lobby that morning, everything looked different through the lens of my impending termination. The modern furniture, the abstract art on the walls, the cheerful receptionist who waved at me from behind her desk, it all felt like I was seeing it for the last time. Marcus's office was on the 2nd floor, corner suite with windows overlooking the downtown Phoenix skyline. I knocked on his door at exactly 9 o'clock, my palms sweating despite the building's aggressive air conditioning. "Come in, Madison. Close the door behind you." Marcus Henderson was in his early 50s, with silver hair and the kind of easy confidence that came from building a successful business from scratch. He gestured for me to sit in one of the leather chairs across from his desk, and I perched on the edge, trying to look composed while my heart hammered against my ribs. "How was your weekend?" he asked, which seemed like an odd way to start a firing. "It was fine," I lied. "Thank you for asking." He nodded and picked up a folder from his desk. "Madison, I'll cut right to the chase. I've been watching your work closely over the past few months, and I'm impressed." "Wait, what?" The Morrison campaign you handled last month was exceptional, creative, strategic, and you managed to bring it in under budget. That's not easy to do with a client as demanding as Morrison. I blinked at him, trying to process what I was hearing. The Morrison campaign had been a nightmare, a local restaurant chain that changed their mind about messaging every other day. I'd worked nights and weekends to keep up with their demands, convinced I was barely keeping my head above water. A lot of love and effort went into bringing this story to life. If you're enjoying it, we'd be so grateful if you'd subscribe to our channel. Now back to where we left off. The Patel account too, Marcus continued. You turned around a relationship that was heading south and not only retained the client, but secured additional business. That takes skill. My mouth felt dry. Thank you, sir. I really enjoyed working on those projects. Which brings me to why I asked you here. He leaned forward, his expression serious but not unkind. Rachel Morrison is leaving us next month. She's moving to San Diego to be closer to her aging parents. That leaves us with an opening for senior marketing manager. Senior marketing manager? That was 3 levels above my current position. Rachel was someone I looked up to, a woman in her 40s who seemed to effortlessly juggle complex campaigns and difficult clients. The idea that I could step into her role felt impossible. I'd like to offer you the position, Madison. It comes with a significant salary increase, your own office, and the opportunity to lead a team of junior coordinators. You'd be the youngest senior manager in the company's history. I stared at him, certain I'd misheard. Are you serious? Marcus smiled, dead serious. I know it's a big jump, but I believe you're ready for it. You've shown initiative, creativity, and the ability to handle pressure. Those are exactly the qualities we need in a senior role. The salary he quoted was more than double what I was currently making, enough to move out of my studio apartment, maybe even start building some real savings, enough to prove to my mother and to myself that I wasn't a mistake after all. I'd need an answer by the end of the week, Marcus said. It's a big decision, and I want you to take time to think it through. But Madison, I hope you'll say yes. I think you could do great things here. I floated through the rest of that day in a daze. My colleagues congratulated me when word got around the office, and I found myself grinning at random moments, still hardly believing it was real. But as evening approached, one thought kept running through my mind. I had to tell my mother. Tuesday morning came with the usual Phoenix heat, but I barely noticed as I drove to my mother's house in Glendale. The modest 2-story home where I'd grown up looked smaller somehow. The desert landscaping my father had installed years ago now looking tired and overgrown. I sat in my car for 10 minutes before finally working up the courage to knock on the front door. My mother answered wearing her usual Tuesday uniform, yoga pants and an oversized t-shirt from Tyler's high school football team. Her expression shifted from surprise to wariness when she saw me standing there. Madison, what are you doing here? We need to talk. She stepped aside reluctantly, and I followed her into the living room. The same beige furniture, the same family photos arranged on the mantel, the same ceramic elephant collection my grandmother had started and my mother had inherited. Everything exactly as it had been since my childhood, frozen in time while the rest of the world moved forward. If you're here to lecture me about Saturday night— I got promoted, I said. She blinked. What? Senior marketing manager at Henderson & Associates. Marcus offered me the position yesterday morning. My mother sank into her favorite armchair, the one with the worn spots on the armrests where she'd sit every evening to watch her crime shows. Senior manager? But you've only been there. 8 months, I know. He said I'd be the youngest in the company's history. For a moment, neither of us spoke. I could hear the air conditioning cycling on, the distant sound of a leaf blower somewhere in the neighborhood. How much? She asked finally. I told her the salary figure, and her eyebrows rose. It was more than my father had made in his best year as a mechanic, more than she currently made working part-time at the dental office. She shook her head slowly. That's substantial, Madison. It is. She looked down at her hands, twisting her wedding ring, a nervous habit I'd inherited from her. I suppose congratulations are in order. Are they? The question hung between us. My mother had spent Saturday night telling me she was the biggest mistake of her life, and now I was standing in her living room with proof that maybe, just maybe, she'd been wrong. Madison, about what I said at your party. You called me your biggest mistake, Mom, in front of all my friends. You said you and Dad failed as parents because of who I turned out to be. Her face crumpled slightly. I was frustrated. You have to understand, watching you these past few years, seeing you so lost. I wasn't lost. I was figuring things out. Were you? Because from where I sat, it looked like you were hiding. You graduated with honors, Madison. You were valedictorian of your high school class. You had opportunities, and you just let them slip away. I moved to the window, looking out at the backyard, where my father used to barbecue on weekends before his heart attack 3 years ago. The grill was still there, covered with a tarp, like my mother couldn't bear to get rid of it, but couldn't stand to look at it either. You want to know why I took that job at Henderson and Associates? I said without turning around. It wasn't because I was passionate about marketing. It was because I was tired of you asking me when I was going to get a real job every time we talked. That's not... It is, though. Every conversation we had ended with you asking about my career plans, my dating life, when I was going to buy a house, when I was going to give you grandchildren. It was like you had this checklist of what my life was supposed to look like, and I kept failing to check the boxes. I turned back to face her. You know what the funny thing is? I'm actually good at marketing. Really good. I never expected that. But I figured it out because I had to. Because staying in that job meant proving to you that I wasn't a complete failure. My mother's eyes are wet now. I never said you were a failure. You didn't have to say it. It was in every disappointed look, every pointed question about Emma's new house or Tyler's promotion. It was in the way you introduced me to your friends. This is Madison. She's still figuring things out. The silence stretched between us, filled with years of accumulated hurts and misunderstandings. Finally, my mother spoke. Your father and I, we didn't go to college. You know that. When you graduated, we thought the hard part was over. We thought you'd just step into this successful life. And when I didn't, you decided you'd made a mistake having me. No, her voice was sharp now. That's not what I meant, and you know it. Then what did you mean? She was quiet for a long moment, staring at the family photos on the mantel. Pictures of Tyler's graduation, my college graduation, family vacations from when I was younger and we all still pretended to enjoy each other's company. I meant we made a mistake in how we raised you. We told you that you were special, that you could do anything, be anything, but we never taught you how to handle it when things got difficult. We never prepared you for the possibility that success might not come easily. I felt something shift in my chest, a loosening of a knot I'd been carrying around since Saturday night. When I saw you at that party, living in that tiny apartment, working a job that barely paid your bills, I panicked. I thought we'd failed you. I thought maybe if we'd been harder on you, pushed you more, you wouldn't have spent 6 years drifting. I wasn't drifting, Mom. I was learning. There's a difference. She looked up at me then, really looked at me, maybe for the first time in years. Tell me about the promotion, she said quietly. So I did. I told her about the Morrison campaign, about staying up until 3 in the morning redesigning their logo because they'd decided at the last minute they hated everything we'd done. I told her about the Patel account, how I'd spent weeks researching their target demographic and building a marketing strategy that doubled their online engagement. I told her about Marcus's faith in me, about how he'd said I had the potential to do great things. I told her about the office I'd be getting, about the team I'd be leading, about the projects that were already being earmarked for my department. As I talked, I watched my mother's expression change. The worried frown lines around her eyes softened. Her shoulders relaxed. For the first time in months, she looked proud. You know what the best part is? I said. I actually love it. I love the challenge of figuring out what makes people tick, what motivates them to buy something or try something new. I love creative problem solving, the way you have to balance art and science to make a campaign work. It sounds like you found your calling, she said. Maybe I did. Or maybe I just found something I'm good at that also pays well. Either way, it's mine. I earned it. My mother stood up then and crossed the room to where I was standing by the window. For a moment, I thought she might hug me, but instead she just stood beside me, both of us looking out at the backyard. "I'm sorry," she said finally, "for what I said at your party, for the way I've been treating you these past few years. You're not a mistake, Madison. You never were." "I know," I said. "And surprisingly, I meant it. Are you going to take the job?" "I already did. I called Marcus this morning and accepted." She nodded. "Good. That's good." We stood there in comfortable silence for a few minutes, watching a roadrunner dart across the yard, something that had always delighted me as a child and still made me smile. "There's something else," I said. "What?" "I want to start taking photography seriously, not as a replacement for my job, but as something I do on the side. Maybe do some wedding photography on weekends and build up a portfolio." I braced myself for the usual lecture about realistic expectations and backup plans, but it didn't come. "I think that's a wonderful idea," my mother said. "You always were good with that camera of yours." As I drove home that afternoon, I thought about all the versions of this conversation I'd imagined over the years. In some of them, my mother apologized tearfully and begged for my forgiveness. In others, we had a screaming match that ended with me storming out and never speaking to her again. The reality had been quieter, more complicated, and somehow more satisfying than either extreme. We hadn't fixed everything. There were years of accumulated resentment that wouldn't disappear overnight, but we'd made a start. My phone rang as I was pulling into my apartment complex. It was Emma. "Madison! Oh my God! I heard about your promotion. Derek's friend works at Henderson and Associates, and apparently it's all anyone can talk about over there." I laughed. News travels fast. "Are you kidding? Senior marketing manager at 28? You're like a legend now. Derek won't shut up about how he knew you were destined for great things. Derek barely spoke to me at the party." "Details. So tell me everything. What's the salary like? When do you start? Are you getting an office?" As I filled Emma in on the details, I realized something had changed. Not just the promotion, not just the conversation with my mother, but something deeper. For the first time in years, when someone asked me about my life, I actually had good things to report. "You know what the crazy part is?" I told Emma. "I actually feel like myself again, like the person I was supposed to be all along." "Maybe you just needed to give yourself time to figure it out." "Maybe," I agreed, "or maybe I just needed everyone to stop telling me who I should be long enough to figure out who I actually was." After we hung up, I sat in my car for a few more minutes, looking up at my studio apartment. In a few weeks, I'd be able to afford something bigger, maybe even something with a separate bedroom or a small office where I could set up my photography equipment. But for now, it was home. And for the first time since Saturday night, that felt like enough. The first week as senior marketing manager was like drinking from a fire hose. Rachel Morrison spent 3 days walking me through her active campaigns, introducing me to clients, and explaining the intricate web of personalities that made up the Henderson and Associates ecosystem. "The key to surviving here," she told me over coffee on Wednesday morning, "is understanding that every client thinks their project is the most important thing in the world. Your job is to make them feel like they're right while still managing to get actual work done." My new office was on the 3rd floor, with a view of the mountains that rimmed the Phoenix Valley. It came with a mahogany desk that had probably cost more than my monthly rent, 2 client chairs upholstered in buttery leather, and a bookshelf that I'd need to figure out how to fill with something other than marketing textbooks. But for now, it was home, and for the first time since Saturday night, that felt like enough. The first week as senior marketing manager was like drinking from a fire hose. Rachel Morrison spent 3 days walking me through her active campaigns, introducing me to clients, and explaining the intricate web of personalities that made up the Henderson and Associates ecosystem. "The key to surviving here," she told me over coffee on Wednesday morning, "is understanding that every client thinks their project is the most important thing in the world. Your job is to make them feel like they're right while still managing to get actual work done." My new office was on the third floor, with a view of the mountains that rimmed the Phoenix Valley. It came with a mahogany desk that had probably cost more than my monthly rent, two client chairs upholstered in buttery leather, and a bookshelf that I'd need to figure out how to fill with something other than marketing textbooks. The team I inherited consisted of three junior coordinators: Ashley Chen, a recent ASU graduate who attacked every project with the enthusiasm of a golden retriever; Marcus Rodriguez, a quiet guy in his early 30s who'd been passed over for promotion twice and seemed to view my arrival with barely concealed skepticism; and Jennifer Walsh, a sharp-tongued woman in her 40s who'd been doing the same job for 5 years and made it clear she thought I was too young for the position. "So, what's your vision?" Jennifer asked during our first team meeting on Thursday. "What's the big plan for revolutionizing how we do business around here?" I could hear the challenge in her voice, the assumption that I'd come in with grand ideas that would disrupt workflows that had been functioning fine without me. "Honestly, I don't have a vision yet," I said. "I've been here for a week. I'd rather spend some time understanding how things work before I start changing them." Jennifer's eyebrows rose slightly, and I caught what might have been approval flickering across her face. "Smart answer," Marcus said quietly. The real test came on Friday when Harold Brannon, CEO of a local restaurant chain called Desert Bloom Bistro, stormed into the office demanding to see whoever was handling his account. Rachel had already left for San Diego, and Harold's account had been transferred to me 3 days earlier. "Where's Rachel?" he demanded, standing in my doorway like an angry thundercloud. Harold was in his 60s, built like a linebacker, with silver hair and the kind of commanding presence that probably served him well in the restaurant business, but made everyone around him want to hide under their desks. "Rachel moved to San Diego, Mr. Brannon. I'm Madison Cooper, your new account manager. How can I help you?" He looked me up and down with obvious skepticism. "How old are you?" "Old enough to handle your account professionally," I said, gesturing to one of the client chairs. "Please, have a seat and tell me what's concerning you." For a moment, I thought he might storm out. Instead, he sat down heavily and pulled out his phone. "These social media posts your team put up yesterday," he said, showing me his screen, "they're all wrong. The specials are from last week, the photos are from the wrong location, and you've got the hours listed incorrectly for 3 of my restaurants." My stomach dropped. I pulled up the Desert Bloom account on my computer and scrolled through the posts. He was absolutely right. Someone on my team had uploaded an entire week's worth of content without double-checking any of the details. "You're absolutely right, Mr. Brannon. This is unacceptable, and I take full responsibility." "Damn right you do. I've got customers calling me asking why we're advertising fish tacos when we stopped serving them 2 months ago." I spent the next hour on the phone with each of his restaurant managers, getting the correct information for every location. Then I called Ashley, Marcus, and Jennifer into my office. "Which one of you posted the Desert Bloom content yesterday?" I asked. Ashley's face went pale. "That was me, but I used the materials that were in the shared folder." "The materials that were clearly labeled as outdated," Jennifer interrupted. "I told you to double-check with the client before posting anything." "I didn't see that label," Ashley said, her voice getting smaller. "Because you didn't look," Marcus added. "You just grabbed the first folder you saw." I held up a hand. "Okay, enough. Ashley, you made a mistake. A big one. But the system that allowed outdated materials to be easily accessible is also a problem. We're going to fix both issues." I spent the rest of the afternoon creating new protocols for content approval and client communication. By 6 o'clock, we had corrected all the Desert Bloom posts, personally called each restaurant to apologize, and sent Harold Brannon a detailed plan for preventing similar errors in the future. Harold called me at 7:30 that evening. "I have to admit, I'm impressed," he said. "Rachel was good, but she never moved that fast to fix a problem. You handled this like a pro." "Thank you, Mr. Brannon. I know trust has to be earned, especially after today's mistake." "You're right, it does, but you're off to a good start." That weekend, I finally had time to process everything that had happened since my birthday. I drove out to South Mountain, one of my favorite photography spots, and spent Saturday morning shooting the sunrise over the desert. The light was perfect, golden and soft, turning the saguaro cacti into silhouettes against the painted sky. As I was packing up my equipment, my phone rang. It was Tyler. Hey, superstar. How's the executive life treating you? It's been a week, I said. A really intense week. Mom told me about your promotion. She also told me about your conversation on Tuesday. I climbed back into my car and started the drive home. What did she say? That she was wrong about you. That she let her own fears make her say things she didn't mean. Tyler paused. She also said you handled it with more grace than she deserved. I don't know about grace. I was pretty angry. You had every right to be. What she said at your party was way out of line. We talked for another 20 minutes as I navigated the Saturday morning traffic back into Phoenix. Tyler told me about his promotion at the lumberyard, about how Sarah was pushing him to propose, about the house they were looking at in a neighborhood that would give their future kids good schools. You know what's funny, he said as we were ending the call. I always thought you had it figured out better than I did. What do you mean? I mean, you were brave enough to not settle for the first thing that came along. I took the first decent job I could find after high school and never really questioned whether it was what I wanted to do. You kept looking until you found something that actually fit. After we hung up, I sat in my apartment parking lot thinking about what Tyler had said. Maybe my mother had been wrong about me drifting. Maybe I hadn't been drifting at all. Maybe I'd been searching. Sunday afternoon brought an unexpected visitor. I was editing the photos I'd taken at South Mountain when someone knocked on my door. I opened it to find Mrs. Rodriguez holding a plate of enchiladas. For you, she said in her accented English. Congratulations on your new job. How did you know about that? She smiled mysteriously. Small building, people talk. Mrs. Rodriguez was somewhere in her 70s, a widow who'd lived in the apartment across from mine for 3 years. We'd never had more than brief hallway conversations, but she always seemed to know everything that was happening in everyone's life. Thank you, I said, accepting the plate. They smell amazing. My grandmother's recipe. You eat, you celebrate. Big promotion. Very impressive for someone so young. As she turned to go, she paused. You know, I heard about your birthday party last week. My face heated up. I'm sorry if we were too loud. I know the walls are thin. Not too loud, but I heard what your mother said to you. Mrs. Rodriguez shook her head. Mothers, sometimes they forget that words can cut deeper than knives. She was frustrated with me. Mothers are often frustrated. Doesn't give them the right to be cruel. She patted my arm gently. But children who succeed despite their parents' doubts, they grow strong. Like plants that grow through concrete cracks, they have deeper roots. That evening, as I ate Mrs. Rodriguez's enchiladas and worked on my photos, I thought about roots, about the difference between being planted in fertile soil and having to fight your way through concrete. Maybe the struggle had been necessary. Maybe the years of uncertainty and my mother's disappointment had forced me to dig deeper, to become someone who could handle the pressure of a job I'd never imagined I'd want. My phone buzzed with a text from an unknown number. Hi, Madison. This is Derek. Got your number from Emma. I work for a tech startup that's looking for a marketing consultant. Emma said you just got a big promotion. Any chance you'd be interested in some freelance work? The pay is excellent. I stared at the message for a long moment. 3 weeks ago, I'd been worried about making rent. Now I was turning down side work because I didn't need the money. I texted back. Thanks for thinking of me, Derek. I'm flattered, but I'm focusing on my new role right now. Maybe in a few months? His response came quickly. Absolutely understand. Emma said you're killing it over there. Let me know if you change your mind. As I got ready for bed that night, I caught my reflection in the bathroom mirror. The same cracked mirror I'd been staring into every morning for months. But something was different. The woman looking back at me stood straighter, smiled more easily, carried herself with a confidence I hadn't seen in years. Tomorrow would bring new challenges, new clients, new opportunities to prove myself. But for the first time in a long time, I was looking forward to it. I thought about my birthday wish, made just over a week ago, while standing in this same small apartment surrounded by people who loved me, despite their flaws and mine. I'd wished for confidence, for direction, for the courage to pursue the life I actually wanted instead of the one I thought I should want. Maybe wishes do come true, just not always in the way you expect them to.
3 weeks into my new role, I made a discovery that would change everything I thought I knew about my career trajectory. It started with a simple request from Marcus Henderson to review the company's client retention rates over the past 2 years.
I spent my lunch break Tuesday digging through files and spreadsheets, looking for patterns in why certain clients stayed while others left. What I found was troubling. Henderson and Associates was losing approximately 30% of their clients within the first year, and another 20% by the end of year 2. In the marketing industry, those numbers were catastrophic. The reasons varied, but a theme emerged from the exit interviews. Clients felt like their accounts were being managed by a committee, with no single point of contact who truly understood their business goals. They complained about inconsistent messaging, delayed responses, and the feeling that their projects were being passed around like hot potatoes. I was still analyzing the data when Ashley knocked on my office door. "Madison, there's someone here to see you. She says she's from Westfield Development Group." I knew that name. Westfield was one of Phoenix's largest real estate development companies, the kind of client that could make or break a marketing firm. They'd been working with our biggest competitor, Platinum Creative, for the past 5 years. The woman who walked into my office was striking, tall, probably in her mid-40s, with silver-streaked hair pulled back in an elegant bun and wearing a charcoal gray suit that probably cost more than my monthly salary. Her handshake was firm, her smile polite but measuring. "Miss Cooper, I'm Victoria Westfield. I understand you're the new senior manager here." "Yes, ma'am. Please have a seat. What can I do for you?" Victoria settled into one of my client chairs and studied me with sharp blue eyes. "I'll be direct. We're considering making a change from our current marketing firm. The work has become predictable, stale. We're launching 3 major residential developments next year, and we need fresh thinking." My pulse quickened. Westfield Development would be the largest account Henderson and Associates had ever landed, potentially worth more than all our current clients combined. "I'd be very interested in hearing about your projects," I said carefully. "Before we go any further, I want to know something. How long have you been in marketing?" The question I'd been dreading. "Professionally, about 2 years." Her eyebrows rose slightly. 2 years? And you're already a senior manager?" "I am." "That's either very impressive or very concerning." Victoria leaned back in her chair. "Which is it?" I thought about deflecting, about giving her some polished answer about rapid advancement and exceptional performance. Instead, I decided on honesty. 6 months ago, I would have said I was concerned. I was promoted because I delivered results on difficult accounts, but I spent most of my time feeling like I was in over my head. I met her gaze directly. Now, I think it's impressive. I've learned more in the past month than I did in the previous year, and I'm hungry to prove myself with bigger challenges. Victoria smiled for the first time since entering my office. "Good answer. Tell me, what do you know about luxury real estate marketing?" "Honestly, not as much as I should, but I know about aspirational marketing, about selling dreams and lifestyles rather than just square footage and amenities. I know that your buyers aren't just purchasing homes, they're investing in a vision of who they want to be." For the next hour, Victoria outlined Westfield's upcoming projects: Canyon Vista Estates, a gated community targeting young professionals; Heritage Hills, luxury homes for established families; and the Pinnacle, ultra-high-end penthouses for Phoenix's elite. Each project needed its own marketing strategy, its own brand identity, its own approach to reaching the right buyers. "I'm going to be honest with you, Madison," Victoria said as our meeting wound down. "You're not the obvious choice for this account. Platinum Creative has a proven track record with luxury developments. They have senior partners with decades of experience. But their last 3 campaigns for our competitors have been nearly identical. Same messaging, same visual style, same predictable approach. I'm tired of predictable." She stood and extended her hand again. "I'd like you to put together a proposal for Canyon Vista Estates. Consider it an audition. If your ideas impress me, we'll talk about the other projects." After she left, I sat in my office staring at the mountains, my mind racing. This was the opportunity of a lifetime, but also the kind of high-stakes situation that could end my career before it really began. If I failed to land Westfield, Marcus would question his decision to promote me. If I did land them and then screwed up the execution, the reputation damage could sink the entire company. I called an emergency team meeting for 4 o'clock. Westfield Development, Jennifer said when I explained the situation. You know they've been with Platinum Creative for 5 years, right? There's probably a reason they're looking to switch. What kind of reason? I asked. Marcus Rodriguez, who'd been quiet during most of the meeting, spoke up. My cousin works in their accounting department. Says there's been tension about budget overruns and missed deadlines. Apparently, Platinum's been coasting on their reputation instead of actually delivering results. Ashley was practically bouncing in her chair. This is huge, Madison. If we land Westfield, we'd need to hire more people, maybe even open a second office. Let's not get ahead of ourselves, I said. First, we need to create a proposal that blows their minds. I want fresh ideas, innovative approaches, something they've never seen before. We spent the rest of the week in intensive research mode. Jennifer used her connections in the real estate industry to gather intelligence on Westfield's target demographics. Marcus analyzed successful luxury marketing campaigns from other markets. Ashley dove deep into social media trends and digital marketing strategies. I, meanwhile, did something that probably should have occurred to me earlier. I drove out to look at Westfield's existing properties. Saturday morning found me in Scottsdale, walking through Paradise Valley Estates, a Westfield development that had opened 2 years earlier. The houses were beautiful, Southwestern contemporary style with clean lines, floor-to-ceiling windows, and carefully manicured desert landscaping. But as I walked the streets, something felt off. The neighborhood was too quiet, too perfect. It looked like a movie set rather than a place where real people lived. The marketing materials I'd picked up at the sales office were all about luxury amenities and high-end finishes, but they didn't tell a story about what life would actually be like here. That's when it hit me. Westfield wasn't just selling houses, they were selling community. But their marketing had been focused entirely on the product instead of the experience. I spent Sunday visiting their other developments, taking photos and notes. By Monday morning, I had the beginnings of an idea that was either brilliant or completely insane. The team gathered in the conference room Tuesday morning to review our progress. I'd asked everyone to prepare their best concepts, no matter how unconventional. Okay, I said, pulling up the Canyon Vista Estate site plan on the projector. Forget everything you think you know about real estate marketing. If you were going to sell a lifestyle, not just a house, how would you do it? Ashley went first. What if we created fictional residents, like actual characters with backstories and Instagram accounts? Show people what their lives could look like living there. Jennifer nodded thoughtfully. That's not terrible. We could do day-in-the-life videos, show the community from the perspective of different types of buyers. I like it, I said. Marcus, what's your take? I've been thinking about experiential marketing, he said. What if instead of just showing people the model homes, we created experiences, like host a sunrise yoga class on the community trail or a food truck festival in the Central Plaza? Let people feel what it's like to be part of the community before they buy. The ideas kept flowing. Interactive virtual tours that let potential buyers customize their homes in real time. Partnerships with local businesses to create a Canyon Vista lifestyle package. A mobile app that would connect residents and create a sense of community even before the first house was sold. By Thursday, we had a comprehensive proposal that was unlike anything Westfield had probably ever seen. Instead of focusing on square footage and granite countertops, we positioned Canyon Vista as where your story begins, a community designed for people who were writing the next chapter of their lives. Friday morning, Victoria Westfield returned to our office with 2 companions, her marketing director, a sharp-eyed woman named Sarah Kim, and someone introduced only as Robert from corporate. I suspected Robert was probably someone very high up the Westfield food chain. We're ready for your presentation, Victoria said, settling into her chair with the same measuring look she'd given me the week before. I stood at the front of the conference room, acutely aware that the next 30 minutes could define my career. Behind me, the projector displayed our campaign mock-up, a young couple laughing as they paint a bedroom, sunlight streaming through floor-to-ceiling windows, the tagline, "Where Your Story Begins," overlaid in elegant typography. Real estate marketing traditionally focuses on features, I began, square footage, amenities, location. But people don't buy features. They buy feelings. They buy possibilities. They buy the chance to become the person they want to be. I click to the next slide, a timeline showing a buyer's journey from first interest through move-in and beyond. Our proposal for Canyon Vista Estates isn't just about selling houses, it's about creating a community before the first foundation is poured. For the next 25 minutes, I walked them through our entire strategy, the fictional resident profiles that would make the community feel real and attainable, the experiential marketing events that would let people test drive the lifestyle, the mobile app that would connect future neighbors and create excitement around the development. By Thursday, we had a comprehensive proposal that was unlike anything Westfield had probably ever seen. Instead of focusing on square footage and granite countertops, we positioned Canyon Vista as where your story begins, a community designed for people who were writing the next chapter of their lives. Friday morning, Victoria Westfield returned to our office with two companions, her marketing director, a sharp-eyed woman named Sarah Kim, and someone introduced only as Robert from corporate. I suspected Robert was probably someone very high up the Westfield food chain. "We're ready for your presentation," Victoria said, settling into her chair with the same measuring look she'd given me the week before. I stood at the front of the conference room, acutely aware that the next 30 minutes could define my career. Behind me, the projector displayed our campaign mock-up, a young couple laughing as they paint a bedroom, sunlight streaming through floor-to-ceiling windows, the tagline, "Where your story begins," overlaid in elegant typography. Real estate marketing traditionally focuses on features, I began, square footage, amenities, location. But people don't buy features. They buy feelings. They buy possibilities. They buy the chance to become the person they want to be. I click to the next slide, a timeline showing a buyer's journey from first interest through move-in and beyond. Our proposal for Canyon Vista Estates isn't just about selling houses. It's about creating a community before the first foundation is poured. For the next 25 minutes, I walked them through our entire strategy, the fictional resident profiles that would make the community feel real and attainable, the experiential marketing events that would let people test drive the lifestyle, the mobile app that would connect future neighbors and create excitement around the development. When I finished, the room was quiet. Victoria exchanged looks with Sarah and Robert, some silent communication passing between them. "Questions?" I asked, trying to keep my voice steady. "Just one," Robert said, speaking for the first time. "When can you start?" Landing the Westfield account changed everything overnight. By Monday morning, news had spread through Henderson and Associates like wildfire. Marcus Henderson called an all-hands meeting for 10 o'clock, something he'd never done in the 8 years since founding the company. The entire staff crowded into the main conference room. Account managers, graphic designers, administrative assistants, even the maintenance crew. Marcus stood at the front, beaming like a proud father. "Ladies and gentlemen, I have an announcement that's going to change the trajectory of this company. As of Friday afternoon, we are now the exclusive marketing partner for Westfield Development Group." The room erupted in applause and cheers. I felt my face flush as heads turned toward me, colleagues offering congratulations and pats on the back. "This contract," Marcus continued, "represents the largest account in our company's history. It will allow us to expand our team, upgrade our technology, and compete with the biggest firms in the Southwest." After the meeting, I barely made it back to my office before the phone started ringing. Other clients wanted to schedule meetings, headhunters from competing firms trying to poach me, even a reporter from the Phoenix Business Journal asking for an interview about the rising star of Phoenix marketing. But the call that mattered most came Tuesday afternoon. "Madison?" It was my mother's voice, tentative and unsure. "I just heard from Mrs. Patterson next door that you were in the newspaper." I'd forgotten that my mother religiously read the business section, probably looking for news about people she knew or companies where her friends worked. "It's just a small article, Mom." "Small?" She laughed, and for the first time in months, it sounded genuinely happy. "Madison, they called you a marketing visionary. They said you landed the biggest real estate account in Arizona this year." The reporter might have been exaggerating a little. "I don't think so." Her voice got quieter.
I'm proud of you, sweetheart. Really proud. The words hit me harder than I'd expected. After years of disappointing looks and pointed questions about my career choices, hearing my mother say she was proud felt like validation I didn't know I'd been craving. Thanks, Mom. That means a lot. I was wondering, would you like to come to dinner Sunday? I'm making that chicken recipe you used to love when you were little. Tyler and Sarah are coming, and I thought maybe we could celebrate properly this time. Sunday dinner at my childhood home felt surreal. The same dining room table where I'd done homework for 12 years, the same floral wallpaper my mother had hung when I was in middle school, the same mismatched chairs that had accumulated over decades of family meals. But something fundamental had shifted. Instead of interrogating me about my career plans or comparing me unfavorably to Tyler's achievements, my mother actually listened when I talked about work. She asked thoughtful questions about marketing strategies and client relationships. She even suggested I bring my camera next time to show her some of my photography. You know what I realized? Tyler said as we were clearing dishes after dinner. You never stopped believing in yourself. Even when the rest of us were worried about you, you just kept going. I don't know about that, I said. There were plenty of times I wanted to give up. But you didn't. That's the difference. Walking to my car after dinner, I found my mother waiting by the driver's side door. Madison, I need to say something, and I need you to really hear me. I braced myself, wondering if she was about to qualify her earlier praise with concerns about getting too cocky or reminders to stay humble. What I said at your birthday party, calling you our biggest mistake, that was the cruelest thing I've ever said to anyone, especially to my own daughter. You didn't deserve that, no matter how frustrated I was. She took a shaky breath. I spent 6 years watching you struggle and thinking it meant we'd failed as parents. But you weren't struggling, were you? You were growing, and I was too scared to see the difference. Mom, let me finish. You are not a mistake. You never were. You're the daughter who taught herself photography by watching YouTube videos. You're the one who talked your way into that marketing job with no experience because you convinced them you could learn anything. You're the one who just landed the biggest account your company has ever seen because you dared to think differently. Tears were running down her cheeks now, and I felt my own eyes getting wet. You're not a mistake, Madison. You're a miracle, and I'm sorry it took me so long to see it. The drive home was a blur of tears and relief and a feeling I couldn't quite name, like a weight I'd been carrying for years had finally been lifted from my shoulders. The next few weeks passed in a whirlwind of activity. We hired 2 new junior coordinators and a graphic designer. I moved into a bigger office on the 4th floor with floor-to-ceiling windows and enough space for a proper conference table. Most importantly, Victoria Westfield became a regular presence in our office, working closely with our team to refine the Canyon Vista campaign.
I have a confession, she told me during one of our Thursday planning sessions. When I first came to see you, I was expecting to be disappointed. My board wanted me to explore alternatives to Platinum Creative, but I thought it was a waste of time. What changed your mind? I asked. Your honesty. When I asked about your experience, you could have inflated your credentials or given me some slick sales pitch. Instead, you told me the truth and then showed me why the truth didn't matter as much as the results you could deliver. By the end of March, our Canyon Vista campaign was ready to launch. We'd created an entire fictional community of residents, complete with social media profiles and backstories. Dr. Sarah Mitchell, the emergency room physician who chose Canyon Vista for its proximity to hiking trails. James and Maria Santos, the young entrepreneurs who fell in love with the community's commitment to sustainability. Eleanor Chen, the retired teacher who was downsizing but didn't want to sacrifice style or connection to neighbors. The launch event was scheduled for a Saturday morning in April. We'd rented the sales office space that Westfield was still constructing and transformed it into an immersive experience. Visitors could walk through virtual reality tours of their future homes, meet the residents we'd created, and experience what life in Canyon Vista would actually feel like. 2 days before the launch, I got a call that made my blood run cold. Madison, this is Victoria. We have a problem. What kind of problem? Platinum Creative. They're claiming we stole proprietary campaign concepts from their Canyon Vista proposal. They're threatening legal action and demanding that we cancel the launch. My stomach dropped. That's impossible. We developed everything independently. We never saw their proposal. I know that, and you know that, but they've hired a lawyer, and they're claiming the virtual reality concept and the community storytelling approach were ideas they presented to us 6 months ago. I sank into my desk chair, my mind racing. Everything we'd worked for, everything the team had poured their hearts into for the past month, could be destroyed by a legal battle we couldn't afford to fight. Victoria, what do you need from me? I need you to document everything, every meeting, every brainstorming session, every email where your team developed these ideas. And I need you to do it fast, because if we can't prove independent development, we'll have to scrap the entire campaign. I spent that entire night in the office with Ashley, Jennifer, and Marcus, going through every file, every email, every scrap of documentation we could find. By sunrise, we had a complete timeline of our creative process, from my first visit to the Paradise Valley Estates through the final approval of our campaign materials. But as I looked at the stack of evidence we'd assembled, I couldn't shake the feeling that this was just the beginning of a much bigger fight. Friday morning arrived with an email that made my hands shake as I read it. The subject line was simple: Cease and Desist, Canyon Vista Marketing Campaign. The sender was Catherine Walsh from Walsh & Associates, one of Phoenix's most expensive law firms. I forwarded the email to Marcus Henderson and called him immediately. "How bad is this?" I asked when he picked up. "Bad enough that I'm calling our attorney right now. Don't panic, Madison, but don't do anything related to the Canyon Vista launch until we figure this out." The cease and desist letter was 3 pages of legal language that essentially boiled down to this: Platinum Creative claimed they had presented Westfield with identical marketing concepts 6 months earlier, complete with virtual reality tours and community storytelling. They were demanding $2.5 million in damages and wanted an immediate injunction to stop our campaign launch. My stomach dropped. That's impossible. We developed everything independently. We never saw their proposal. I know that, and you know that, but they've hired a lawyer, and they're claiming the virtual reality concept and the community storytelling approach were ideas they presented to us 6 months ago. I sank into my desk chair, my mind racing. Everything we'd worked for, everything the team had poured their hearts into for the past month, could be destroyed by a legal battle we couldn't afford to fight. Victoria, what do you need from me? I need you to document everything. Every meeting, every brainstorming session, every email where your team developed these ideas. And I need you to do it fast, because if we can't prove independent development, we'll have to scrap the entire campaign. I spent that entire night in the office with Ashley, Jennifer, and Marcus, going through every file, every email, every scrap of documentation we could find. By sunrise, we had a complete timeline of our creative process, from my first visit to the Paradise Valley Estates through the final approval of our campaign materials. But as I looked at the stack of evidence we'd assembled, I couldn't shake the feeling that this was just the beginning of a much bigger fight. Friday morning arrived with an email that made my hands shake as I read it. The subject line was simple: Cease and Desist, Canyon Vista Marketing Campaign. The sender was Catherine Walsh from Walsh & Associates, one of Phoenix's most expensive law firms. I forwarded the email to Marcus Henderson and called him immediately. "How bad is this?" I asked when he picked up. "Bad enough that I'm calling our attorney right now. Don't panic, Madison, but don't do anything related to the Canyon Vista launch until we figure this out." The cease and desist letter was 3 pages of legal language that essentially boiled down to this: Platinum Creative claimed they had presented Westfield with identical marketing concepts 6 months earlier, complete with virtual reality tours and community storytelling. They were demanding $2.5 million in damages and wanted an immediate injunction to stop our campaign launch. By noon, I was sitting in a conference room with Marcus, our company attorney David Chen, and Victoria Westfield, who looked more angry than worried. "This is complete nonsense," Victoria said, sliding a folder across the table.
Here's Platinum's actual proposal from 6 months ago. See for yourself. David opened the folder and spread out the documents. Platinum's proposal was exactly what Victoria had described weeks earlier: predictable, generic, focused entirely on luxury amenities and high-end finishes. There was no mention of virtual reality, no community storytelling, no experiential marketing. "So what's this about?" Marcus asked. David was scanning through the cease and desist letter again. "My guess, they found out about your campaign, realized how innovative it was, and decided to claim they thought of it first. It's a common tactic when a competitor is about to launch something that makes you look obsolete." "Can they stop our launch?" I asked. "Theoretically, yes, if they can convince a judge that they have a legitimate claim. But based on what I'm seeing here, that's unlikely. The problem is, even frivolous lawsuits can take months to resolve, and by then your launch momentum will be gone." Victoria leaned forward. "What if we fight back? What if we can prove they're lying?" "How?" David asked. That's when I remembered something. "Victoria, you said Platinum's been doing identical campaigns for your competitors, right? The same messaging, same visual style?" "Yes, Desert Springs Development, Canyon Creek Properties, Mountain Vista Homes. They've all used nearly identical Platinum campaigns over the past 2 years." I looked at David. If Platinum really developed these innovative concepts 6 months ago, why haven't they used them for any of their other clients? Why are they still doing the same boring campaigns they've been doing for years? David's eyes lit up. That's actually brilliant. If they really had these ideas, there would be a trail of implementation across their other accounts. "I can get you examples of their recent work," Victoria said. "I sit on the board of the Phoenix Real Estate Developers Association. We see everyone's marketing materials."
The next few hours turned into a war room situation. Victoria made calls to her contacts throughout the industry, gathering examples of Platinum Creative's recent campaigns. Ashley and Marcus scoured social media and industry publications for more evidence. Jennifer used her network to find out if anyone had inside information about Platinum's actual proposal timeline. By evening, we had assembled a devastating case against Platinum's claims. Not only had they never implemented any of the concepts they claimed to invent, but their recent campaigns showed a complete lack of innovation. More damaging still, Jennifer had discovered that Platinum's lead creative director, the person who would have developed the concepts they claimed to own, had only been hired 3 months ago, 3 months after they allegedly presented these ideas to Westfield. "There's something else," Jennifer said, looking up from her laptop. "Remember Derek from Emma's boyfriend? The one who works in tech? What about him? He freelances for several marketing companies, including Platinum Creative. I reached out to him this afternoon." She paused dramatically. "Derek says Platinum's been scrambling for weeks, ever since word got out about our Westfield contract. They've been asking their freelancers to develop virtual reality concepts and community storytelling approaches." The pieces were falling into place. Platinum hadn't developed these concepts 6 months ago. They'd been frantically trying to develop them now, in response to our successful campaign. David Chen was grinning as he assembled our response. "This isn't just a defense anymore. This is a counterattack. They've filed a frivolous lawsuit designed to harm your business reputation and interfere with your client relationships. That's grounds for a countersuit." Saturday morning, instead of launching our Canyon Vista campaign, we were back in David's office, preparing our legal response. But Victoria had an idea that was either genius or completely insane. "What if we don't wait for the lawyers to sort this out?" she said. "What if we launch anyway and make Platinum's accusations part of the story?" "What do you mean?" Marcus asked. "I mean, what if we're completely transparent about this? What if we invite the media to see both campaigns side by side? Let people judge for themselves which one is original and which one is derivative." David looked uncomfortable. "That's risky, Victoria. It could backfire if..." "If what?" "If people see that Platinum's campaign looks like every other real estate marketing they've seen for the past 5 years. If they realize that our approach is actually innovative." Victoria stood up, pacing to the window. "I'm tired of playing defense. Let's make this a public relations war instead of just a legal one."
By Sunday evening, we'd completely reworked our launch strategy. Instead of a simple campaign reveal, we were hosting what Victoria dubbed the Innovation Showdown, a public event where both marketing approaches would be displayed side by side, with industry professionals and potential buyers voting on which campaign better represented the future of real estate marketing. The local business media loved the story. Phoenix Business Journal ran a front-page article titled "Marketing War Erupts Over Canyon Vista." Channel 12 News did a segment on the battle for real estate innovation. Even the Arizona Republic picked up the story, framing it as a David versus Goliath fight between a scrappy local firm and an established industry giant. Monday morning brought both good news and bad news. The good news, our phone hadn't stopped ringing with inquiries from other potential clients who wanted to work with the innovative marketing team. The bad news, Platinum Creative had doubled down, filing an additional claim for defamation and demanding an emergency injunction to stop our Innovation Showdown event. But something unexpected happened during the emergency hearing on Tuesday. The judge, an older woman named Patricia Hendricks, seemed more interested in seeing the actual marketing materials than in listening to legal arguments about intellectual property. "Counselor," she said to Platinum's attorney, "I'm looking at your client's proposal from 6 months ago, and I'm looking at the defendant's current campaign. Other than the fact that they're both about real estate, I'm not seeing the similarities you're claiming." Platinum's attorney shuffled through his papers. "Your Honor, the concepts of virtual reality tours and community storytelling are clearly what? Basic marketing techniques that have been used in various forms for decades?" Judge Hendricks looked directly at David Chen. "Mr. Chen, do you have examples of similar techniques being used in other industries?" David stood up with a stack of folders. "Yes, Your Honor. Virtual reality has been used in retail marketing for over 5 years. Community storytelling is a fundamental principle taught in every basic marketing course. And here are examples of both being used in real estate marketing as far back as 2018. The hearing lasted less than an hour. Judge Hendricks denied Platinum's request for an injunction and strongly suggested that they reconsider their legal strategy before wasting any more of the court's time.
Walking out of the courthouse, I felt a mix of relief and vindication that was almost overwhelming. We'd not only survived Platinum's attack, we'd exposed them as desperate and unethical competitors who were willing to use frivolous lawsuits to stifle innovation. "So," Victoria said as we stood on the courthouse steps, surrounded by reporters and photographers, "are you ready to make real estate marketing history?" The Innovation Showdown was scheduled for Thursday evening at the Phoenix Convention Center, 2 days to prove that sometimes the best defense really is a good offense. Thursday evening, the Phoenix Convention Center buzzed with an energy I'd never experienced before. What started as a simple campaign launch had transformed into the marketing industry's equivalent of a heavyweight boxing match. Over 300 people had registered for the Innovation Showdown: real estate developers, marketing professionals, potential home buyers, journalists, and curious spectators who'd been following our story in the media. The convention center's main hall had been divided into 2 distinct sections. On the left side, Platinum Creative had set up their traditional display: glossy poster boards showcasing luxury amenities, granite countertops, and perfectly staged model home photos. Their presentation looked exactly like every real estate marketing campaign of the past decade: polished, expensive, and completely forgettable. Our side of the hall told a different story entirely. We'd created an immersive environment where visitors could walk through virtual reality tours of Canyon Vista homes, meet our fictional residents through interactive displays, and experience what community life would actually feel like. Ashley had even convinced a local food truck to park outside, serving samples of what our fictional Neighborhood Taco Tuesday might taste like. "Madison, you need to see this," Jennifer called from across the hall. She was standing next to our registration table, holding a tablet showing our live social media feed. People weren't just attending the event, they were documenting every moment. #Innovation Showdown was trending on Twitter. Instagram was flooded with photos of people experiencing our VR tours. Even TikTok users were creating content comparing the 2 approaches. Look at this, Ashley said, showing me her phone. Someone posted a video called Boring versus Brilliant, the real estate marketing battle. It already has 50,000 views. But the moment that defined the entire evening came when Victoria Westfield took the microphone for the official presentation portion of the event. Ladies and gentlemen, 6 months ago, Platinum Creative presented Westfield Development with a marketing proposal that was professionally executed and competently delivered. It was also identical to every other real estate campaign we'd seen for the past 5 years. The crowd was silent, hanging on every word. 3 weeks ago, Madison Cooper and her team at Henderson & Associates presented us with something completely different. Not just a marketing campaign, but a vision for how real estate marketing could evolve to meet the needs of modern buyers who want more than square footage. They want community, they want connection, they want to belong to something meaningful. She gestured toward our interactive displays. Tonight, you get to experience both approaches and decide for yourself which one represents the future of our industry. What followed was 2 hours of the most intense professional validation I'd ever experienced. People stood in long lines to try our VR tours. They took selfies with our fictional residence displays. They engaged with our interactive neighborhood map, exploring hiking trails and community gardens that existed only in our imagination but felt completely real. Meanwhile, the Platinum Creative display looked increasingly isolated. A few people wandered through their traditional poster boards, but most spent less than 2 minutes before moving on to our immersive experience. The unofficial voting results weren't even close. By the end of the evening, over 90% of attendees said they preferred our innovative approach. More importantly, 3 other real estate developers approached me during the event, wanting to schedule meetings about their own upcoming projects. But the most meaningful moment came near the end of the evening when I spotted 2 familiar faces in the crowd, my mother and Tyler, standing near our community storytelling display, looking slightly overwhelmed but unmistakably proud. "How did you even know about this?" I asked when I finally managed to make my way over to them. "Emma posted about it on Facebook," Tyler said. "Mom saw it and insisted we come." My mother was staring at the virtual reality setup where people were taking tours of homes that didn't exist yet, but felt completely real. "I don't understand all of this technology," she said quietly, "but I understand that you created something that makes people happy." She turned to look at me directly. "6 months ago, I thought you were wasting your potential. Tonight, watching you up there presenting to all these people, I realized I never really understood what your potential was." "Mom, let me finish. You didn't just find a career, Madison. You found a way to help people imagine better lives for themselves. That's not a job. That's a calling." As the crowd began to thin out, Victoria Westfield found me near our registration table. "Well," I asked, "how do you think it went?" "I think," she said with a smile, "that you just revolutionized how real estate gets marketed in this city, maybe in this entire region." She handed me a folder. "These are contracts for Heritage Hills and the Pinnacle projects. If you're ready to handle 3 major campaigns simultaneously, the accounts are yours." I opened the folder and nearly dropped it when I saw the combined value of the contracts. It was more money than Henderson & Associates had generated in their entire first 3 years of operation. "Victoria, I don't know what to say."
Say you're ready for the challenge, because after tonight, every developer in Phoenix is going to want to work with the team that created the Innovation Showdown. The following Monday brought news that put everything into perspective. Platinum Creative had withdrawn their lawsuit and issued a public apology for their misunderstanding about the origin of our campaign concepts. More satisfying still, 3 of their senior clients had terminated their contracts and reached out to us about switching their marketing representation. Marcus Henderson called another all-hands meeting, but this time the mood was purely celebratory. "When I started this company 8 years ago," he said, "I dreamed of competing with the major marketing firms in cities like Los Angeles and San Francisco. I never imagined we'd become the firm that other agencies in those cities would want to emulate." He looked directly at me. "Madison, in less than 6 months, you've transformed not just your own career, but the trajectory of this entire company." I've been authorized by our board to offer you a partnership track with the goal of making you a full partner within 2 years. Partnership. At 28 years old, I was being offered a path to owning part of a company that was rapidly becoming one of the most innovative marketing firms in the Southwest. That evening, I drove back to South Mountain, the same place where I'd been taking photographs just 2 months earlier. But this time, I wasn't shooting the sunrise alone. I was there with Tyler and Sarah, who'd asked me to photograph their engagement session. "You know what's funny?" Sarah said as I adjusted my camera settings. "Tyler always talked about his sister, the dreamer, the one who was too creative for the business world. But watching you at that event last week, you weren't choosing between creativity and business success. You were using creativity to create business success." As the sun set behind the mountains, painting the desert in shades of gold and orange, I thought about the journey that had brought me here. From that humiliating birthday party where my own mother called me her biggest mistake, to standing on a mountain with a camera in my hands and a partnership offer in my future. "Hey, Madison," Tyler called out. "Remember when you used to say you felt like you were living someone else's life?" "Yeah." "Whose life do you feel like you're living now?" I looked through my camera viewfinder, capturing the moment when Sarah said yes to Tyler's proposal, and smiled. "Mine," I said. "Definitely mine." 6 months later, the Canyon Vista Estates development sold out completely, the fastest sellout in Westfield's company history. Our marketing campaign won 3 industry awards and was featured as a case study in the Harvard Business Review. But more importantly, I'd learned something that no marketing textbook could have taught me. Sometimes, the biggest mistake isn't the path you choose, it's letting other people's fear of that path convince you that you've chosen wrong. My mother was right about one thing at my birthday party. I had been drifting for years. But I hadn't been drifting aimlessly. I'd been drifting toward exactly where I was meant to be. Sometimes, the most important journeys don't look like progress until you reach the destination. And sometimes, the worst birthday of your life really can become the beginning of the best chapter you've ever written. Looking for more? We've got 2 amazing stories ready for you right on screen. If this one touched you, these are absolutely worth your time. Click to watch them now. And hey, subscribe and hit that bell to never miss our latest uploads.